A year after the plane crash at the Kozhikode airport that killed 20 people and injured several others, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, or the AAIB, has released a 257-page report that investigated that ill-fated flight that led to the loss of at least 20, including the 2 pilots who were killed. Let's go across to Vishnu Som, who has this report with him. Vishnu, what are the findings of this report and what was the probable cause of accident?
In 2 words, Sarah, pilot error. And this was something which was being discussed quite extensively, given that we knew from the very onset that the aircraft in question, an Air India Express Boeing 737-800, had landed in windy and rainy conditions in Kozhikode more than halfway down the runway and appeared to be unable to stop. Now the crash report, which is officially out, confirms that. And I'll just read out the operative part of that crash report. It says the probable cause of accident was the non-adherence to standard operating procedures by the pilot flying, in other words, the pilot in command, in this particular case, the pilot in the left-hand seat, wherein he continued an unstabilized approach and landed beyond the touchdown zone halfway down the runway in spite of a go-around call by the pilot monitoring. In other words, he'd been warned by the co-pilot. This warranted a mandatory go-around. In other words, he should have aborted the takeoff and should have just continued down the runway, taken off again and made another attempt to land. And the failure of the pilot monitoring, in other words, the pilot who was actually saying go-around, to take over controls and execute a go-around. So in this, they've blamed both the pilot in command and the pilot monitoring. The pilot flying was the commander of the aircraft. And in very simple terms, this says that the touchdown point in the runway was more than halfway down the length of the runway. There was an alert sounded by the co-pilot telling the pilot in command to go around, but the pilot in command did not, in fact, adhere to that. In that situation, according to this document, the standard operating procedure would have been for the co-pilot, on the basis of his warning to go around, to take over controls, and then perhaps proceed to do that. In either case, irrespective of who actually should have gone around and what does go around mean? It means applying full power, gently lifting up and just attempting to land once again, irrespective of whether the pilot in command or the co-pilot should be doing that. The fact of the matter is they didn't. And therefore the aircraft was unable to stop by the end of the runway. This is a tabletop runway. It slammed down the bottom of a very steep slope, and 21 people, I believe, lost their lives, 19 individuals, passengers on board, and 2 crew members. So there was a detailed investigation, and this is what has been found. Now, just a couple of other points, which I've been able to go through. It's more than 200 pages long. 3 seconds before touchdown, and I'm quoting from the report, the pilot monitoring, in other words, the co-pilot, again tried to catch the attention of the pilot flying by giving a feeble, uncomfortable call, "Captain," when the aircraft had crossed the end of the touchdown zone, in other words, 3,600 feet beyond the threshold. Now, in a runway, there is an ideal touchdown zone. It extends for a particular length of that runway, and usually pilots would always attempt to land within that touchdown zone. If you go beyond that touchdown zone, and it happens frequently, for example, if there is a tailwind, in this particular case, there was a tailwind component. The aircraft was being pushed down. It was a windy day. The surface of the runway was wet. That was another factor which would have adversely affected the landing, the braking performance of the aircraft. So the co-pilot did give an alert 3 seconds before touchdown. The co-pilot again tried to catch the attention of the PF, in other words, the pilot flying, by giving a feeble, uncomfortable call, "Captain," when the aircraft had crossed the end of the touchdown zone, 3,600 feet beyond the threshold. It had crossed 3,600 feet of that runway and had still not touched down, Sarah, is the key point. The aircraft earlier on, as it was making its approach, because, if things started going wrong a little bit prior to that as well, the aircraft deviated 1.7 dots below the glide slope. When aircraft comes down at a particular angle along what is called a glide slope, If you are too steep in that glide slope, there are alerts which are sounded out automatically. And this is what happened on this occasion as well. There were two EGPWS alerts. In other words, there was a caution for glide slope, glide slope, glide slope. That's what the aircraft automatically calls up. Now the pilot flying increased the pitch attitude. In other words, he tried to come out of that and the descent rate did start to decrease, but then they got over the runway and tried to stop the aircraft, get it to land, but it floated. It didn't land immediately, it floated, and the touchdown point of the aircraft more than halfway down the length of the runway. Again, I'm going to just read out one or two small bits here. As soon as the aircraft did touch down, and as I mentioned, and I say this repeatedly, well beyond the halfway point of the runway, the pilot flying immediately resorted to maximum manual braking, overriding the automatic brake selection. The pilot monitoring the co-pilot gave the standard calls for speed brake up and auto brake disarm, but there was no response from the pilot flying to the standard calls given by the pilot monitoring as per the standard operating procedure. By then the pilots would have known they're very close to the edge of the runway. So it is a very sad circumstance, the situation which resulted in this crash. As I mentioned, more than 20 people, I believe 21 did lose their lives, and now it's taken a year for this crash report to come out. Sarah.
Horribly eerie to hear of those conversations and that attempt of that co-pilot to raise the alarm. Thank you, Vishnu, for those details on that report that has taken a long time coming. The other big story of Saturday, Vijay Rupani resigned as the Chief Minister of Gujarat ahead of an assembly election in Prime Minister Modi's home state later next year. What's behind this move and why now? Well, sources say the party's central leadership expressed dissatisfaction with his performance in containing the spread of the coronavirus in the state, and this is a course correction in a critical year. The opposition's reaction to Mr. Rupani's resignation was led by Hardik Patel, the working president of the Congress's Gujarat unit, who declared, and I'm quoting, that it is now clear that the BJP proved to be a complete failure. Vijay Rupani has now become the fourth BJP leader to step down as Chief Minister of a party-ruled state in 6 months.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी के प्रति अपना आभार व्यक्त करता हूं कि मेरे जैसे एक पार्टी के कार्यकर्ता को गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री पद की महत्वपूर्ण जिम्मेदारी दी। भारतीय जनता पार्टी की यह परंपरा रही है, समय के साथ साथ कार्यकर्ताओं के दायित्व भी बदलते रहते हैं। यह हमारी पार्टी की विशेषता है कि जो दायित्व पार्टी द्वारा दिया जाता है, पूरे मनोयोग से पार्टी कार्यकर्ता उसका निर्वहन करते हैं और मुख्यमंत्री के रूप में मुझे जो दायित्व का निर्वहन करने के बाद अब मैंने मुख्यमंत्री पद से त्याग पत्र देकर पार्टी के संगठन में नई ऊर्जा के साथ काम करने की इच्छा भी जताई है।
And the 34-year-old woman who was raped and brutalized inside a stationary tempo in suburban Mumbai's Sakinaka in the early hours of Friday died on Saturday morning while being treated at a local hospital. In a vile attack that bore a disturbing similarity to the assault on a young medical student in Delhi in 2012, the woman was sexually assaulted and tortured.
A 34-year-old woman raped and brutalized inside a stationary tempo in Sakinaka area of Mumbai died in hospital battling for her life. The police have arrested a 45-year-old man and formed a special investigation team to probe the case. The Chief Minister has assured a fast-track trial.
A special investigation team under our experienced officer ACP Jyotsna Rasam has been formed, and she has been assigned the task of completing the investigation within 1 month time.
According to the police, the control room received a call around 3:20 am on Friday that someone is beating a woman up. The main control room then informed the local police, and within 10 minutes the local police reached the spot. They found the woman lying unconscious in an open tempo. Without waiting for an ambulance, the police rushed the woman to hospital in the tempo itself. The police say they caught the accused on the basis of CCTV footage.
And on perusal of the various CCTV cameras, we could trace out the accused, who turned out to be Mohan from Jaunpur of UP. We have arrested the accused and we have taken his police custody till 21st of September.
The government is assuring swift action in the case. The opposition has asked for death penalty for the guilty.
It is very sad. The lady is no more. The accused has been arrested. Definitely government will take a step to file charge sheet within the time as soon as possible.
साकी नाका की जो घटना है ये बहुत ही दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है। एक प्रकार से मानवता को कालिख पोतने वाली ये घटना है। हमारी मांग है कि इसके ऊपर कड़ी कार्रवाई की जाए कि ऐसे आरोपियों को सजा देना तो कोर्ट का काम है, पर उनको फांसी की सजा ही होनी चाहिए।
There's been a number of sexual assault cases reported from multiple districts in Maharashtra in the last month, raising questions on the law and order situation in the state. With Sohit Mishra in Mumbai, Sana Marwaha for NDTV.
And India's COVID chart is showing an improvement. India reported some 33,000 new COVID-19 cases, a drop of 4.5% from yesterday. However, Mizoram has now reported over 1,000 fresh COVID cases for the fourth consecutive day on Friday. This as 1,055 more people, including 185 children, tested positive. And the increase in cases is now worrying health officials.
Mass testing and an enhanced vaccination drive in Mizoram's capital Aizawl. The state is grappling with COVID surge, having reported over 1,000 daily cases for 4 consecutive days. There are over 12,000 active cases in Mizoram with an average weekly positivity rate of 11%. According to state government data, over 10% of new infections in the last 1 week are in children, and over 90% of new cases are a result of local transmission. This despite 57% of state's population have got at least 1 dose of the vaccine and 25% of people being fully vaccinated. The administration also admits that the situation is alarming.
There could be a number of factors responsible for this situation. We are working on those factors. Even a single case of COVID-19 could flare up into a full-blown outbreak in any particular village of the state.
So what's behind the Mizoram COVID surge? Health department sources say that mass testing and proper contact tracing is resulting in more detection of cases. Prevalence of Delta variant, authorities believe, could have led to more community transmission. And COVID protocols not being followed by a section of people could be another factor leading to surge, according to sources. Mizoram has a civil society-driven COVID task force for every locality. As cases rise, their challenge is to ensure timely medical attention to the patients and ensure COVID protocols are being followed in their localities.
We have our community COVID care center in a Presbyterian church. All the expenses like the fooding expenses is borne by the Presbyterian church Khatla.
Mizoram now has a partial lockdown. One has to wait to see if the government again imposes stricter curbs. With Dalidia Fanai in Aizawl, Ratndeep Chaudhary for NDTV.
And Delhi, the national capital, came to a standstill as the capital city faced record rains.
The famed Terminal 3 of Delhi's International Airport looking like a swimming pool. Travellers had to wade through knee-deep water to enter the airport and catch their flight. 4 domestic flights and 1 international flight had to be diverted from Delhi to Jaipur and Ahmedabad due to the heavy rains and waterlogging at the airport. Many cars were damaged due to their engines being flooded. While children made merry, this is no laughing matter for the Delhi government.
बस सिंगापुर में है, केजरीवाल के सिंगापुर में है। आप देखिए प्रॉब्लम ही प्रॉब्लम है साहब। पिछले हम 20 साल से देख रहे हैं पूरी दिल्ली में, जब भी ये कभी सफाई करने आएंगे 20 ढक्कन होंगे मैनहोल के, तो उसमें ये दो चार छोड़ जाते हैं, कहते हैं साहब ये कल करेंगे, और वो कल होता नहीं है, स्टॉक हो जाता है कूड़ा, तो पानी भर जाता है।
After 2-3 hours of good rain, the pictures clearly tell the story how prepared Delhi government MCDs are.
The farmers sitting on a dharna in Delhi for the last 10 months were drenched too, but their spirits were not dampened. And that's not all. The Met Department has forecast heavy rain in Delhi and adjoining areas for the next 2 days. With Saurabh Shukla in Delhi, Bureau Report, NDTV.